Hello, welcome to another video where I'm documenting my adventures in Bing Chat. So what I'm going to do with these videos going forward, I will give them a timestamp or a date stamp more precisely. So this video is being recorded on the 4th of May 2023. The reason why I'm doing that is the environment is changing so fast and there's a load of things that are coming online to do with the Bing Chat interface and add-ins and plugins and features. It's quite a good idea for me now to make a note of when I'm recording this because things change. So the purpose of this video is basically to extend something I'd done in another video where I take a prompt, and you can see this is quite involved. I'm going to read it out, and I try it 3 times in the same conversation style, and then 3 times in the next one, 3 times in the next one. So the idea of this video is to be able to compare asking the same question in the same conversation style and also doing it across conversation styles. It's like a best of 3. Now, if I was doing this a bit more in depth, I'd probably do more passes, like best of 5 or even more than that. But I thought it was good enough to get an illustration and see if there's any differences. So the question I'm asking it's got multiple layers to it here, or multiple factors. In the book Artificial Intelligence: A Modern Approach by Stuart Russell and Peter Norvig, they highlight 4 approaches to artificial intelligence. The approaches are systems that think like humans, systems that act like humans, systems that think rationally, systems that act rationally. Can you compare the 4 different approaches? Please also include specific examples. Under which of the 4 approaches would a so-called rational agent be categorized? It's probably pretty obvious. And what approach do you think is the most promising for AI? So to make this a little bit easier and to avoid me having to keep copying and into a sheet, I'm actually going to try duplicating this tab 3 times, and I should be able to do this. So, and what I'll do is each time I will wipe all 3 once we've compared them, and then we'll move on to the next conversation style. So let's try this. Now what I won't do, I'm not going to switch to this tab, because I find that if you switch tabs while this is doing stuff, it just stops. That's not my experience so far. So there we go, we've got a description that it's come up with. And it has answered, yeah. So a rational agent is a system that acts rationally in an environment. Conceive as systems that act, yeah. A rational agent can be categorized under the 4th approach. I think all 4 approaches have their merits and challenges for AI. I find the 3rd approach the most promising. Okay, so there we go. So we'll switch. Same question, same conversation style. How does the answer differ, if at all? I should have watched here and just seen what search it's doing, because sometimes I notice with the same question you'll get a slightly different sort of pre-production, whatever you want to call it. So this looks a little bit longer. Yeah, so you can see it's wording it slightly differently here. I don't know if the examples are all the same, but let's move on to the third iteration of this. Again, same question, same conversation start. And again, this is just to sort of, encourage people to try this themselves. If I was doing this in a really sort of rigorous and serious manner, then what I would do is obviously make copies of these and then do some sort of comparison between the similarity of the wording. Okay, so look, there's an ad for the book. What do we notice here? So the lengths of these are relatively similar. They've all done what I asked of it, in that it's listed out the approaches, it's compared them by describing what they mean, giving a definition, and then it's given an example of each. Now, whether or not you would call that a system that thinks rationally is another matter, just giving an example of prologue. So here, this is quite good. It's giving much more specific examples of groups of systems. Now again, whether it's correct in its comparison is another matter. It also asks me, what do I think the approach that's most promising? Now, yeah, here it's getting quite involved and talking about contextually. Yeah, so it's much more on the fence in the second one. In the third one, it just says there's no definitive answer. So multiple occasions there. Now, of course, I'm assuming I'm not, I'm running these in separate windows. I'm assuming that I'm not contaminating the results. I just wanted to do it in a way that we could, broadly from a helicopter view, just see the broad differences there. There might be, and that's the easiest way I could think of without, copy pasting each one or using the copy command. At some point, I believe there's going to be an additional option here to do download. I think that's what I've heard. Okay, so what we'll do is we will reset these to more balanced. I'll do it. There we go. And in each of those, I will copy the same question now. So this gives us an opportunity to see, really the detail of the answer. How does it differ across the conversation styles and within itself when you're asking multiple. I keep doing that, don't I? Clicking the wrong button. So I'm expecting it to be slightly more condensed, but we'll see. I've noticed generally, and this is very generally, in the creative conversational style, it often provides more like reflection, or seems to appear that it's thinking about it. But here it's, I mean, it's of a similar length. It's reorganized this slightly. You can see here it didn't give the example here, it gave it down the bottom. So it's rearranging these the segments of the question. Again, possibly, you know, it might have been not the best idea to have a multiple questions in one box, but I did want to try that, to just add in additional questions at the same time and see what might happen. So with this one, it's actually putting the example in line. So using quite a few acronyms that I don't recognise there. It actually looks like this one here, this conversation style might be, again, it's got an ad, it's running. Yeah, that's a new thing. It's happened to me a couple of times. I don't know how long it's been doing that, running ads in the results. And then finally, the third time, in our best of three across all three conversation styles. Okay, so quite a big difference here in the format, actually. In terms of the last question, yeah, again, it won't specifically answer it. Yeah, so there it lists the advantages and disadvantages. So that was the fourth question about which approach do you think is the most promising for AI? Because the four sections were roughly like, compare the four approaches, please include specific examples, under which of the four approaches would a so-called rational agent be categorized, and then finally, which approach do you think is the most promising for AI? So I think all three of these, it's, yeah, again, saying it depends on the context. And then from there, it's going into a bit more detail. This looks like the best. It's actually going through the advantages and disadvantages for each one. Now, in terms of asking the question about which of the four approaches would a so-called rational agent be categorized, a rational agent is a system that acts rationally. Do any of these specifically reference? Yeah, so there it says it's under the fourth approach. There it just doing the same thing where it's quoting it back, but it doesn't specifically say it's the fourth one, but yeah. It's saying a rational agent is a system that acts rationally. Oh, here it's actually got a reference to a page number in the book. Okay, so finally, let's put it into precise mode. See what happens. Okay, so here it's actually coming up with its own. Okay, that's curious. It's not even referencing the book. Okay. It's just focusing in on that. Try again. So not surprisingly, I have run this earlier in the day, and I've not seen it do this before, where it actually just doesn't bother referencing the book. Okay, now it's doing it. Interesting. So yeah, one thing that I would definitely advise people to do is, if they can, keep an eye on this bit here, this sort of, pre-processing, whatever you want to call it, because that obviously has quite a big impact on anything, on the stuff. And then finally, let's see. So, see which way this one goes down. Okay, it has there. I might try it one final time, just because that first one was so different than anything else. Yeah, see here, look, it's again. And it's done multiple ones there. Thinking humanly. Okay, completely different layout here. At this point, much more condensed. Fourth approach for the rational agent. So again, it's sort of sitting on the fence for which approach do you think is the most promising. This one has its own merits. However, I think that the approach of systems that act rationally is the most promising for AI. And then this one will be interesting, because it's inventing its own categories. It hasn't even bothered to reference the book. It says all four approaches have their own strengths and weaknesses. Oh, I see what it's done. It turned it on its head. And yeah, I'm not sure here. Actually, I'm just mindlessly speculating. I just wondered whether it had somehow turned it round and was sort of giving examples and then basing it on that, but it's got examples here as well. Self-propelled vacuum cleaners. Rational under the systems that act rationally approach. So it's referencing that, but not against this. So yeah, let's do it one more time with this particular one, because this is the first time I've seen it where it's creating its own categories. I suppose if you were worried about it going off the rails, you could say, please ensure that you stick to these categories, something like that, like reinforce the request in some way. So yeah, hopefully what this will do is it will encourage you to try some of this out. Again, at the very minimum, I suggest doing like 3 passes on each of the conversation styles. You might want to use a much simpler example. I deliberately wanted to have it a level of complexity in here, so there was a degree of pushing the model a little bit to potentially create some variability. But yeah, I certainly wasn't expecting that. That's a new thing I've seen. So thanks once again for watching. Bye for now, and I will catch you in the next video.